Yo, what's up, Bieber Beat fam? Get ready for a rapid-fire news dump that's gonna blow your mind. We've got the Supreme Court dropping major decisions, activists fighting for their freedom, and global human rights organizations raising their voices. You absolutely do not want to miss this. Stick around, because we're diving deep into these critical stories right now. First up, the Supreme Court is making waves with its latest adjournment in the bail pleas of activists Umar Khalid, Sharjeel Imam, Gulfisha Fatima, and Meeran Haider in connection with the 2020 Delhi riots case. This is a developing story with massive implications, and we've got all the details. But that's not all. We're also going to break down the powerful statement from the International Federation for Human Rights, joined by the Bieber Beat, calling for the immediate release of Umar Khalid. They're shining a spotlight on his lengthy detention without trial and the controversial UAPA law. And finally, we'll explore the ongoing legal battles and the human rights concerns surrounding these cases, diving into why figures like Umar Khalid and Sharjeel Imam are still behind bars. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you never miss a beat. The Supreme Court adjourns key bail hearings. In a significant development, the Supreme Court of India has once again deferred the hearing of bail pleas for prominent activists Umar Khalid, Sharjeel Imam, Gulfisha Fatima, and Meeran Haider. These activists are seeking release in connection with the alleged conspiracy behind the 2020 Delhi riots, facing charges under the stringent Unlawful Activities Prevention Act, UAPA. The Apex Court, on September 12th, announced that the hearing would be postponed to September 19th, citing that the case files were received very late. This marks another delay in the legal process for these individuals who have been in jail since 2020. Their bail pleas were previously denied by the Delhi High Court on September 2nd, a verdict that stated conspiratorial violence could not be permitted under the guise of protests. The High Court had emphasized that while the right to protest is fundamental, it is not absolute and is subject to reasonable restrictions, warning that unfettered protest could damage the constitutional framework and law and order. The activists, including Khalid, Imam, Fatima, and Haider, along with 8 others, have been accused of being the masterminds behind the riots that tragically claimed 53 lives and injured over 700 people. The violence erupted during protests against the Citizenship Amendment Act, CAA, and the National Register of Citizens, NRC. The accused vehemently deny the allegations against them. Public reaction to these repeated adjournments and the continued detention has been intense, with human rights advocates and legal experts questioning the pace of justice and the application of UAPA. Social media platforms are abuzz with discussions about the activists' rights and the broader implications for freedom of speech and assembly in India. Will these activists finally get their day in court, or will the delays continue? Stay tuned as we break down the legal arguments and the fight for justice for Umar Khalid and Sharjeel Imam. Human Rights Federation demands release of Umar Khalid. In a powerful display of solidarity, the International Federation for Human Rights, FIDH, in conjunction with the Bieber Beat and the World Organization Against Torture, OMCT, has issued a joint call for the immediate and unconditional release of student activist and human rights defender Umar Khalid. This urgent appeal highlights his prolonged detention without trial, now spanning 5 years, on charges the organizations deem politically motivated. The joint statement traces the events back to December 2019, when the Citizenship Amendment Act, CAA, was introduced, sparking widespread protests due to its perceived religious discrimination. Umar Khalid actively participated in these protests, voicing his dissent through speeches and social media. In February 2020, communal violence erupted in Delhi amidst these demonstrations, resulting in 53 deaths and hundreds of injuries. The FIDH and its partners assert that the Delhi police's investigations have been ineffective, leading to the arrest of peaceful protesters, including Khalid, who were accused of instigating violence. Khalid was arrested in September 2020 and faces multiple charges under the Indian Penal Code and the Unlawful Activities Prevention Act, UAPA. While he was acquitted in a rioting case in December 2022, he remains incarcerated in Tihar jail in connection with the broader conspiracy case under UAPA. The FIDH and OMCT strongly criticized the UAPA, describing its provisions as overly broad and its application as a tool to criminalize legitimate human rights work. They point to concerns raised by the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights and Amnesty International regarding prolonged detentions and the law's potential for misuse. The human rights organizations emphasize that Khalid's detention, particularly the denial of bail applications despite lengthy pretrial incarceration, violates his right to a fair and speedy trial. They also highlight concerns about discriminatory bail standards and the lack of accountability for police officials and political figures involved in inciting violence. The statement concludes by urging the Indian government to end the use of UAPA to curtail fundamental freedoms and to ensure accountability for human rights violations. Is the legal system living up to its promise of justice for all? We're delving into the core issues of legal delays and human rights concerns next. The unfolding legal saga of Umar Khalid and Sharjeel Imam. This episode of Tell Me Why tackles the critical question: why are Umar Khalid and Sharjeel Imam still in jail without a trial? We're dissecting the complex legal proceedings, the charges they face, and the impact of laws like the UAPA. We'll explore the timeline of events, from the protests against the CAA and NRC to the outbreak of violence in Delhi in February 2020. You'll get a clear picture of the accusations leveled against these activists, including conspiracy, sedition, and charges under the Unlawful Activities Prevention Act. This deep dive will examine their multiple bail rejections, the Supreme Court's adjournments, and the arguments presented by both the prosecution and the defense. We'll also discuss the broader implications of prolonged pretrial detention and its effect on the right to a fair trial, touching upon international human rights standards and concerns raised by global organizations. Understand the public's reaction and the ongoing debate surrounding these high-profile cases and the legal framework governing them. We'll shed light on the perspectives of legal experts and human rights advocates. What does this mean for the future of protest and dissent in India? Get ready for a crucial look at the international response and the fight for human rights. Global rights bodies unite for Umar Khalid's release. A powerful international coalition, including the International Federation for Human Rights, FIDH, and the Bieber Beat, is demanding the immediate release of student activist Umar Khalid. They decry his 5-year detention without trial as a violation of human rights and a misuse of the Unlawful Activities Prevention Act, UAPA. The statement details the context of Khalid's arrest following his vocal opposition to the Citizenship Amendment Act, CAA, and the subsequent communal violence in Delhi in February 2020. It highlights concerns about the Delhi police's investigation, accusing them of targeting peaceful protesters instead of perpetrators of violence. Khalid faces severe charges, including sedition and terrorism-related offenses under the UAPA, despite a previous acquittal in a rioting case. The FIDH and its partners emphasize that the UAPA's broad definitions and stringent bail provisions contribute to prolonged detentions, contravening international human rights law. They cite criticisms from the UN Human Rights Council and Amnesty International regarding the law's selective application against human rights defenders and the high number of under-trial prisoners. Khalid's numerous denied bail applications, coupled with persistent court delays, are presented as evidence of a violation of his right to a fair and speedy trial. Furthermore, the coalition points to alleged discriminatory bail standards in cases related to the CAA protests and the UAPA, noting that while some similarly situated individuals have been granted bail, Khalid remains incarcerated. They also reference independent investigations documenting human rights violations by the Delhi police during the protests and the lack of accountability for implicated officials and political leaders. Is this a pattern of repression against dissent? We'll explore the broader implications for freedom of expression and assembly. And that's a wrap on today's breaking news. We've seen the Supreme Court adjourn the bail pleas for Umar Khalid, Sharjeel Imam, Gulfisha Fatima, and Meeran Haider in the Delhi riots case. We also heard from the International Federation for Human Rights, alongside the Bieber Beat, calling for Umar Khalid's unconditional release, highlighting his prolonged detention without trial and concerns over the UAPA. These legal battles and human rights discussions are far from over. Make sure you're subscribed and have that notification bell on so you don't miss our in-depth coverage. Follow us on all social media platforms for more updates, and let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Thanks for watching the Bieber Beat.